Hey Exiles, I'm back with another video. So after making a poison-based Reave, I started thinking, maybe it would actually be a good idea to try a hit-based version as well. I didn't really expect much from it at first, more of an experiment than anything serious. And oh boy, that turned out to be an amazing idea. So today, I'm presenting to you a hit-based elemental Reave assassin, focused heavily on stacking chance to avoid damage. This character is all about feeling immortal while still putting out very respectable damage. This is an assassin, which means we get very nice power charge generation, a ton of elusive effect, and some of the strongest crit scaling in the game. Reave in itself as a base skill is just amazing to use. It feels smooth, fast, and has an awesome area of effect. The footage you're seeing in the background right now is with only 20% increased area of effect. If you actually invest into AoE, you can turn this into a truly monstrous character that just deletes entire screens. First, I want to talk about defenses, because honestly, this is the most interesting part of the build. This character has an astronomical amount of effective hit pool, thanks to stacking multiple layers of avoidance. We are evasion capped, spell dodge capped, attack block capped, and spell block capped, all at the same time. On top of that, we also have damage reduction, thanks to the Assassin Ascendancy and Fortify. All of these layers together create a character that feels almost impossible to kill in real gameplay. We're stacking a completely insane amount of evasion, mainly thanks to a very well-placed The Light of Meaning jewel. This jewel gives 7% increased evasion to passive skills in a large radius, and it basically covers most of the evasion scaling this character needs by itself. And I want to point this out very clearly. This jewel is considered worthless. People simply don't use it. Most of the gear we're running has massive amounts of evasion and suppression, but in this league, which is Keepers, even basic gear with triple tier 1 mods is almost worthless. It's actually crazy that GGG allowed the tree to print this kind of items. The block cap comes from 3 main sources: a thick shield with high block chance, a very efficient block wheel on the passive tree, and 4 replica reckless defense jewels. We're also using a strong Watcher's Eye with chance to evade attacks and spell suppression chance. When you really think about it, if an enemy tries to hit us, there's only about a 1% chance that the hit actually goes through. Let's break that down. First, an attack needs to pass through 95% chance to evade, which leaves only 5%. Then that 5% has to get through 75% chance to block, which brings it down to about 1.25%. And after all of that, we still have a chance to avoid damage entirely thanks to elusive. With the spells, it looks a little bit worse, because there's around 6% to get hit, but still it's crazy. Because of this, we're effectively creating a fake effective hit pool. It looks fake, but it absolutely isn't. In real gameplay, this character just doesn't die. That pretty much covers the defensive side of things. As I mentioned before, we're playing an assassin, which allows us to take the absolutely beautiful node Mistwalker. This node gives us elusive on crit, and while elusive is active, we cannot take extra damage from critical strikes. This is insanely strong. This is actively preventing us from getting one shot. For those who don't know, elusive is a buff that gives decaying movement speed, chance to avoid damage, and in our case, an astronomical amount of critical strike multiplier. This comes from a combination of the elusive mastery on the tree and the Nightblade support gem. I really recommend pausing the video at this point, because this is extremely important. Elusive plays a massive role in the entire build. Without elusive, we sit at around 339% critical strike multiplier. But the moment we crit an enemy, the tooltip suddenly skyrockets to around 850% crit multi. If we average that out, accounting for the decaying effect of elusive, we're sitting at roughly 600% critical multiplier. Anyone who has ever made a build in Path of Exile knows that this is a very respectable number, especially considering we get it with almost no investment. We get it just for being an assassin and using a single support gem. For comparison, on average, this is about twice as strong as a critical damage support gem. The character deals all types of elemental damage, which means we're constantly shocking and freezing enemies. This creates a very snappy and satisfying playstyle because enemies shatter instantly. It almost looks like they're just disappearing in front of you with every hit, which feels incredibly smooth and satisfying. In our main hand, we have a standard elemental dagger, nothing crazy. Since we're using a dagger, scaling attack speed is super easy. The passive tree is filled with attack speed nodes. However, I do want to mention that the character was lacking some base % increased damage scaling. To fix that, I went with double cluster jewels, each with 12 passive nodes, focusing on increased damage, increased effect, and attack speed. These clusters are mandatory, not only for damage, but also for survivability. Since we can't scale block without replica reckless defenses, these clusters provide the jewel sockets we need to make the whole setup work. I also want to be very clear about this. This is a Mage Blood character with Awakened Multi-Strike, but neither of these are must-have. I made a separate path of building without them, and you only lose about 30% of your damage, while saving around 200 divines. Mage Blood is not required. You can absolutely build this character on a 30 to 50 divine budget, but obviously you'll have to give up some quality of life features that Mage Blood provides. Now let's talk about the gear. As I mentioned before, everything is stacked with evasion and suppression. Boots, gloves, helmet, body armor, and shield. Since the character is playing with acrobatics, we need to hit the trace hold of 150% suppression chance. For the amulet, we're using a rare with maximum life, critical multiplier, intelligence, chaos resistance, and some extra flat damage to attacks. The rings are very similar, life, some resistances, and added damage. Nothing fancy, very simple gear, but it works perfectly. For the Ascendancy, we take Unstable Infusion for power charge generation, for the Jugular for extra crit multi, and Culling Strike, Opportunistic, which is a very underrated node in my opinion, and of course, the star of the entire character, Mistwalker. For auras, we're running Grace, Blood and Sand, Tempest Shield, Clarity, and Precision. We also use automation with Steel Skin attached for extra survivability. Since we're rarely getting hit, the Steel Skin is a true defense layer. The main link setup is Reave, Night Blade, Trinity for penetration, Awakened added lightning damage. I know this looks weird, but the numbers don't lie. Followed by Multi-Strike and Volatility. Another important piece of equipment is the hands. One of the skills from them gives us Overcharged Sinews, which grants 30% more maximum attack damage, 40 crit multi, and 20% increased damage taken. Since this character avoids almost all hits, this downside barely matters and works perfectly in our favor. So, how much damage do we actually have? About 13 million DPS. That's more than enough to clear the entire game. And keep in mind, the real strength of this character isn't its offense, it's the defense. So the big question, how much did this character cost? In total, around 300 divines. A big chunk of that comes from Mage Blood and Awakened Multi-Strike. Without them, the cost drops to about 100 divines. And if you don't have that kind of currency, don't worry, I'll provide a path of building without those items. But as I said before, you can go easily cheaper. Just sacrifice some damage here and there. This character can clear pretty much all content in the game, mainly thanks to its insane level of survivability. However, remember, this is by no means a perfect character. It has some shortcomings. We are weak to damage over time laying on the ground. And all things considered, even though the mitigation feels amazing, you might get one-shotted from time to time, but that's just a life of evasion character. Some of the boss's abilities can only be mitigated through damage reduction, and our layer of such a things are non-existent. It's by no means a cost-efficient build, but just my own creation that I'm proud of. If you liked the video, please leave a like, subscribe, and remember Path of Exile is brutal. So get a helmet, deal with it, and see ya in the next video.
se renoie.